So for most of us, when we're reminded that, as children, we used to be carefree, we used to be able to just really go for our dreams without all the fear and anxiety. When we're reminded of that and we wonder, how did we get here? How did we get to this place where we start to doubt ourselves? We start to project into the future with fear and anxiety. And yet, take note that she says, if it doesn't scare the hell out of you, then it's probably not worth it. So, where does this place of fear live? If we're meant to feel it and we're not meant to feel it. So let's break that down a little. So, Bruce Lipton is the author of The Biology of Belief, and he writes about how our beliefs control our bodies, our minds, and thus our lives. Now, you know, this is a really powerful statement, but he also says it from the point of view of scientific proof. And so he studies our brains and our subconscious mind. And we make a lot of our decisions from our subconscious mind, and a lot of our beliefs are buried in there that sometimes we don't even know it's there. And we make decisions without even knowing why, and yet there is a certain belief that's driving it. So let's talk a little bit about the relationship between beliefs and emotions. So what really, I'll define emotions in a second, but actually there's this circular interaction between beliefs and emotions. So what I mean is, uh, beliefs can form our emotions, which means we may believe that something bad is going to happen, and so we start to feel anxious. But emotions also form our beliefs. So we may start to feel pain from something, and then we start to believe that every time we do that thing, we're going to feel pain, and so then we don't do it. So it feeds on itself, but it's really all starting from our experiences, our culture, and then of course ultimately our connection to wisdom, because we can have the positive interaction between these versus the negative, right? And so when we talk about experiences, we're talking about our past and what we were told when we were in that state of growth and learning. And so, for instance, if you were growing up and you were told certain things about yourself, you start to believe it. And it creates your reality in this present lifetime, in this present now. In culture, is a huge societal pressure around us to believe certain things. So, for instance, the culture is that we need to go to college, get a good job, climb up the corporate ladder, hopefully become the CEO one day. Uh, and all of you have moved away from that culture. Of course, not saying that we can't still be in the corporate world, but also be a part of this. And there's absolutely no need to quit your jobs. But all I'm saying is I'm giving you an example of how culture has a very strong influence on our beliefs. Like, I am a failure if I am not, you know, CFO or CEO one day, right? And then just this connection to wisdom is this ability to see the higher point perspective of our beliefs and our emotions. So, for instance, someone who has very much been raised to, um, you know, work really hard for 50 years just to retire for 10 years, um, and they're learning over their lifetime to connect to wisdom and really changing their beliefs and saying, actually, all my life I've wanted to be, fill in the blanks, an artist, right? And I believed I couldn't make it in this world. But now there's wisdom coming in and the ability to see that actually I can paint on the side. I can paint when I have time. I don't need to, have that belief stop me, right? So let's really talk about, okay, but why do we need emotional wisdom? So, for instance, the artist had to stop certain beliefs in order to move forward and start to live their dream. So ultimately, our dreams are, in my mind, a remembrance, a nudging that your future includes this vision that you have, this dream that you have. And so, will you let your beliefs stop you, right? So, first, let's talk about what is emotion. So, emotion, you can think of it very simply as energy in motion. So, in that video earlier, I asked if any of you felt any emotions, and some of you said yes. And how do you feel it? You know it. You feel something moving within you. And some people describe it as my stomach was churning, or my heart suddenly felt light, or my heart felt heavy, or you can associate these descriptions about emotions, right? Tight and loose, heavy and light, so hot and cold, right? So this energy within us really is, in a way, meant to talk to our body. And the only way our body can talk to us is by creating these sensations, right? If there was no sensation, you wouldn't know how you are, how certain experiences are informing you. But to get to emotional wisdom, to me, is somewhat like neutral compassion. So, in other words, we may feel strong emotion about something, yet we can respond with drama or suffering, right? Or both. So when we are upset because our child threw something at us, can we step into that place of neutral compassion where we feel that immediate anger, we take that anger as a response from our body to tell us that there's something we need to do here, and can we deliver that something with neutral compassion without yelling, without beating him back, without putting a belief in him. I say him because I have sons, that may actually lead to his own beliefs in the future. So we might say, in my past, I was very much a parent that yelled at my young son, and maybe I might say, and my mom would yell at me, and she would say, "You are useless." And so when we respond like that, we are then transferring our beliefs, which isn't even a real belief, it's just a reaction to our emotion, right? So can we have that wisdom to say, I see that you are angry about something. Can we, learn how to respond to anger differently? Or you sit down with them and allow them to throw their tantrum? Those are the little aspects of emotional wisdom. And ultimately, okay, so we need emotional wisdom to live our dream. And maybe our dream is a household that's peaceful, no yelling children, right? And honestly, I've had people that had come to clean my house, they say, you know, I clean house for so many families, but your family is so peaceful. Your children are so well behaved, right? And I didn't like take a ruler to them or yell at them. Over the years, I learned, okay, and you know, ultimately, all the decisions we make at every single point, that choice point, we are sort of allowed to respond, whether positively or negatively, and then it is the sum of all the decisions we make. So it's never too late, and it's from this moment on, every decision you make, maybe 65% you can respond positively, and that will be uh, living your dream now, you know. So it's like, okay, my dream is to live in a household that doesn't yell, and our son is yelling. So the decision I make right now is I don't yell, because he learns from me. So does that make sense? If y'all have questions, let me know. Okay. So I want to move on to this idea of fear or faith. And what is fear and what is faith? And in that video, she said, if it doesn't scare the hell out of you, then it's not worth it. So what does that all mean? Because we're told to move away from fear, right? So first, think about deep hurt is more difficult to conquer. Yes, yes. So I'll talk about that in a second, Dawn. But this idea of fear of faith, I just want to really talk about when we fear something, we are, would you agree, we're making up a story around something, an action, or whatever it is we believe is the outcome of something. So, for instance, one of my biggest fears, and the more I feared it, the more I did it. So, what I mean is, one of my biggest fears was being in an airplane that was in really rocky turbulence. And every time that happened, my heart would just beat so fast. And, you know, ultimately the fear is projecting into the future, thinking something tragic might happen. Okay, so ultimately fear is this belief that something in the future is going to hurt us, and ultimately everything is fear of death. But what I did ultimately was every time the plane started shaking, I moved into the fear. I automatically moved into the fear anyway, but I didn't suppress it. I just felt it, and I sat there and I felt it and I felt it and I felt it. And there was one point where it got so intense. My heart was beating so fast, but it's almost like there was a point of no return where I went through it, and then it calmed down. So when we talk about really feeling your emotions and going through it, I feel like I felt that with that fear. So faith. Faith is also a projection into the future. Having faith, so a belief or a faith that something is going to happen without needing the proof, without needing the promise of anything. We have faith that tomorrow the sun will come up. We have faith that it's always in the future. We have faith that our children will be, I keep talking about children, but, we have faith that in the future they will be happy, right? So again, both fear and faith are projections into the future. Now, you have heard a lot about, spiritual teachings is to learn to live in the present moment. When we live in the present moment, we are free from all our projections. We are free from this idea of the past hurting us and the future worrying us. So, however, if you were to take a step forward, do you want to take it with fear or faith in your heart? And if you have a choice, why would you choose something that gives you pain versus something that gives you hope, right? And both of them are projections in the future based on your belief system. But neither of them are promises of what's going to happen in the future. In fact, your very action today is what creates your future, like we talked about, your some decisions today. And are you better off at making a decision that's for your highest good and your family and your friends when you are in fear or when you have faith, right? Ask yourself that. But what does it mean to do the things that scare you the most? And that is then tapping into your emotional wisdom. Because emotional wisdom doesn't mean that you don't feel anything. Your body is a feeling machine, not machine, a feeling sensation, sort of, collection of senses, if you will. You are propelled by feeling. So let's say you decide that to move forward, I'm going to have faith that what I see as my dream is really in my future. And every time I step into that faith, I have a little, again, it's like a little tickle in my stomach. And this tickle feels like, and for me, it feels like I'm on the edge of a cliff and I'm about to fly, but I'm not yet flying. And it's that in-between state of being lifted up and being nervous, right? Has anybody felt this kind of feeling? You can raise your hand if you have, or just type yes, right? So if we name that as fear, it can also work, right? There's fear because I'm standing on this edge and I feel this like, oh, what am I doing? Yeah, Philomena, thank you. And Liza says yes, Faye says yes, Angela says yes, Wyomia says absolutely. Yeah. So, but we can really rename that, right? We can rename that as excitement or anticipation, or really this this suspended state of, okay, I'm about to walk with faith into the future, and I have this sensation to accompany me. And can we maybe even give this sensation a name, like a friend, a friend who's walking with me? This feeling that comes up, I know that is really telling me that this is worth it. This is scaring the hell out of me, right? But a lot of that is conscious language. Well, let's not say it scares the hell out of us. Let's not say there's fear with walking with me. Let's really talk about it as being that that piece of excitement, that anticipation, that knowing that this is going to get me closer to my dream. That my body is responding by saying yes, 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 and we're feeling it, right? So start to feel the difference between a heavy negative polarity versus a positive polarity, but also making us a little like, and we have to like, okay, calm down, it's okay. It's like when we're about to walk on stage and get the diamond award, right, Dana, and you're like, oh my god. So it's allow laughter and excitement to come into it. Okay, so then comes the question, what are the beliefs that block you from living your dream? And how can we move past it, right? So first we pause here and ask ourselves these. Write in the chat or just, think about it yourself. What are the beliefs that block you from living your dream? So, one common one is this dream that I have is too much, too big. That's not me. I am not that. I am not worth it. I am just a simple girl from a simple kampong, and why am I having these dreams? And then we start to doubt ourselves and we start to say, oh, it's my ego. It's my, my ambition is too big. Now that's a lot of beliefs there. And where do we get these beliefs from? From our past experiences, right? How do we access those beliefs that we want to break through? And many of us will say, yeah, I know my belief, but every time I try to just move forward, then I block myself. So we call that self-sabotage, right? So for instance, Simran says lack of self-worth and self-doubt. So it's very common. This is a cultural thing that if you're in a room of, female and male executives, and the boss is saying, okay, I have this project, who wants to do it, right? The ones that raise their hands are mostly the men, because they are more self-confident, and we sometimes see that, oh, they're not doing it well, but they're just doing it, and we hold back and think a lot, right? We're like, okay, I'm not worth it. I don't want to fail in front of everyone. If I raise my hand and I say yes, that means everyone's going to look at me, right? So how can we get past that, right? And so it is a combination of truly believing in ourselves and not attaching to the outcome. Because yes, we can raise our hand and say yes, yeah, overthinking. And yet, if we fail, then we are going to start to create another belief so that next time we won't raise our hand, right? It's like, oh, remember that time we raised our hand and we failed? Everybody laughed at us. So my belief now is definitely don't become the person in the spotlight. So we want to be the ones that raise the hand, and we want to be the ones that have no shame about failing. And again, what is your metric of failure and success? We make it up ourselves. Can we see every opportunity every outcome as an opportunity to learn from it, so that we are being guided to, okay, not this way, that way. Okay, not that way, this way. They're like signposts along our path of life. How else can you learn? How else can you be directed to your dream, right? And so it's the overthinking and overanalyzing and labeling everything, right? Do we need to label that a failure? No. So ultimately, everybody is too busy thinking about themselves, and our belief that everybody's thinking about us is sort of a little bit arrogant. Okay, so I love the Gene Keys, and this is a great system of thinking that is somewhat similar to human design. So if any of you ever wanted to just sit down for virtual tea with me, and I'm going to be expanding my hours so that I know it's difficult for some of you to get the right time, but if you ever want to just sit down and talk about your own hologenetic profile, which is your birth date, birth time, and birthplace, and it gives you this really beautiful way of contemplating your own emotional shadows and how to move into the gifts and to the higher consciousness. So anyway, emotional intelligence, Richard Rudd says, has to do with three main things: our ability to listen, our ability to communicate clearly, and our willingness to take responsibility for our own feelings. So this is very clear in how it all has to do only with ourselves. Okay? So someone mentioned earlier about hurt, deep hurt. Now, hurt is almost always a projection of someone's actions on us. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be validated. All feelings are valid. All external circumstances happened and are truth and facts, but how we respond to that, how we create the picture and narrative around what happened to us, is in our control and is our choice. Do you choose to take responsibility for your own feeling? Or do you choose to give up your power to that other person and say, I am not healed until and unless that person apologizes to me? And that may never come. That may never, ever, ever come. And you or I or all of us or any of us will stay in that state of hurting and suffering because that other person did not step up to what we believe they should, right? So again, in the spiritual teachings, you have heard very often, we can only change ourselves. We can never change anyone else. And this is the same thing, our responsibility for our own feelings. So ultimately, when we talk about emotional wisdom, we talk about moving from victimhood into freedom. So victimhood into freedom means I am no longer the victim of someone else's behavior. And this is also, again, it's about neutral compassion. Compassion. It's not about judgment. It's not that person is whatever, fill in the blank. Therefore, I am, not going to bother about them. No, this is very much, I understand where that person is in their own growth cycle. I wish them well. I am only responsible for my own feelings. And so it has to do with forgiveness. It has to do with compassion. But that does not mean that whatever that person did to you is good or bad or right or wrong. It just means it happened. How do I deal with this? How do I move on? How do I live my dream? Tall order, says Dawn. Well, okay, we have the tools. That is the beauty of it, right? We have the essential oils. Okay, so how many of you have this book, Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils by Carolyn Mai? And so, Dawn, I also wanted to say that emotional wisdom, the path to emotional wisdom comes through acceptance. So acceptance means this, so non-resistance. Like I said, when I was on the airplane and feeling the fear, I accepted it and I moved into it. So it's being, taking that choice to very gently accept yourself for that hurt. Accept that there is this deep hurt in you, and not try to push it away, not try to fix it, not try to analyze it. Why am I hurting? Okay, this past thing happened. Okay, how can I move out of it? We want to drop all of that. And that's where this system comes in so nicely. So talking about this book is how I help my clients, I help my customers, I help anybody who wants guidance. So again, if you want to get on a virtual tea with me and talk about it, I'm happy to. But let me just talk a little bit about what the system is in this book, okay? So ultimately, it is breaking us up into spiritual, physical, mental, emotional parts of ourselves. And in this modality, we are feeling our emotions, moving on to recognizing and understanding in the mental sphere. And in the physical sphere, we are aware of where that feeling is. We start to really allow it to be there. And that allows for intuition to come through. And that intuition is also what informs the mental, the recognize and understand. Because a lot of us will say, I don't know why I believe this. Do I have to know why? Do I have to know what incident in the past caused this belief? Not at all. The first indication of anything that we want to really sort of breathe into is movement in our body. We feel this sadness, and it's right in my heart area. So then we take the book and we look at the charts, and we can find a point in the heart area and say, okay, it's right there that I feel this pain. Let's just pick out the oil and work on it. Or, oh, my neck really hurts and it's just right in this point. So we look it up. Or the lower back. The lower back is a very common one. And the lower back is almost always associated with this feeling of being unsupported. Like, nobody helps me. I have to do everything on my own. Everybody else is enjoying life. I'm just here suffering. So we create these stories that go on in our brain and lead to more suffering. So let's talk about that, right? Recognize and understand the emotional pattern. So we're ultimately gaining emotional wisdom is living from love instead of fear. And what this means is loving ourselves, loving that emotion inside us, and not trying to push it away, right? Not saying I'm hurting so deeply, I don't want to hurt anymore. But it's really saying I'm hurting so deeply and I love myself even because of that, and really then stepping into like, what is it that will make you feel better? Like, I want you to just feel into that. So physical, we're clearing the cellular memory stored in the body, and that's also, so all of these is where emotional essential oils come in, right? In the mental, recognize and understand the emotional pattern. As we inhale the essential oils, it is programming our memories. So it goes into our limbic system, and that is where we store our memories and emotions. And honestly, we are reprogramming it to get that into the higher frequency of where we actually get to really be in that state of neutral compassion and to start to live our dream. So emotional patterns can be released with essential oils. And the physical part, clearing a cellular memory stored in the body, that's what essential oils do. When we put it on the physical alarm point, it is entering, clearing the cellular memory in there. And I'll go into the chemistry of that. So, and the emotion, to identify and feel the feelings, we are giving ourselves space and time to do that. And again, when the essential oils go into where our emotional brain is, it is really accessing that part of us. And many people have done this and say, oh, I just remembered a memory I have forgotten for years. And it allows it to clear it out. And then the spiritual part, increasing awareness through intuitive insight. And oils that have high sesquiterpenes can help us to connect with that spiritual part of us, and we start to receive intuition, a knowing, a guidance from within, from our higher self that is always wise, always calm, always peaceful, that lives in our heart. And many of us have felt that a little bit here and there, where all of a sudden it's like, I don't know why I did that, but I just knew I had to do it, and that's that internal guidance. And we start to connect with that more and more as we learn this technique. So, okay, so really, why essential oils, right? Because essential oils act as the channel between the physical body and the body's electromagnetic field. Now, all this is from Dr. David Stewart's book, Chemistry of Essential Oils Made Simple. The chemical compounds in essential oils enter the cells through receptor sites. Those receptor sites have like locks, and the essential oil molecules are like the keys. And lo and behold, it fits just perfectly. That is the miracle, right, of essential oils. It fits into that cell, unlocks it, and allows that cell to come into its full functioning. That is the blueprint of that cell, which means that was its original functioning, that maybe was distorted by, toxins. Can be physical toxins, spiritual toxins, mental toxins, emotional toxins, right? All of that is cluttering up. You can imagine like all like really scribbles in there, and the essential oils go in there and create harmony. So the chemistry of essential oils is the PMS paradigm. P for phenolics. Phenols. Phenols are like the hot oils, clove, cinnamon, oregano. These go in there and they clean the receptor sites. Okay, these are just very simple layman language. Dina is a chemist; she might know more. Sesquiterpenes delete the bad info from cellular memory. So these are, so let's say brain power. I know it's a different, is it age-wise in Malaysia? And it goes in there, deletes the bad info from cellular memory. And the monoterpenes, they restore or awaken in the cell's DNA. So the monoterpenes are the ones that go in there and they stabilize everything. They say, okay, now that we are clean, now that we have the bad info gone, let's nurture this cell so it can do the right thing. Scent-wise, yes, thank you. Okay, does this make sense so far? There's a lot of information in very little time. So I went through this a little bit earlier, why essential oils. It has all the benefits that fits all the 4 quadrants, right? So enhanced focus, awareness, function of the brain, affect our moods, lifting our vibration up to a higher frequency, and they carry intelligence. They work with our intentions, which means that if you had a bottle and it says peace and calming on it, and when we use it, we are calling in peace and calming, that's our intention, and that's what it will help us to achieve. And so intention can become beliefs, right? We say these affirmations because we are reprogramming our subconscious, and ultimately our subconscious says, okay, I'm starting to believe. And that's how we come back full circle into working on our beliefs. So this is Dr. David Stewart. It's saying essential oil molecules can be balancing, rejuvenating, stimulating, energizing, calming, restoring, facilitating, cleansing, immunizing, detoxifying, all of it. Mood elevating, soothing, healing, emotionally releasing, spiritually uplifting, right? Depending on what receptor sites they open and what we may have stored in the body region in the form of diseases, toxins, microbes, and blocked feelings. So essential oils carry intelligence. They have a life force. that goes beyond chemistry. Essential oils molecules are remarkably compatible with human tissue, and that is that lock and key, right? So beyond just the physical, there is that intelligence. You say peace and calming, and I'll say right here. You say peace and calming and say, okay, right here. So that is where, the brilliance of the alarm points come in, and let's just talk a little bit about that. And this is from the book. And Carolyn Mine says, clearing a deep pattern, a deep suffering, a deep pain within us requires bringing the lesson to conscious awareness and fully understanding. Now, I don't want this to block you, because there may be times when we do it and we don't understand it, and that's okay. Because as we like to say to do this at night so that our dream body and subconscious body can process it for us. And we may wake up and say, wow, I feel better today. But do I need to analyze it? Do I need to understand it? No. But what happens is the next time a situation of that nature arises, we find ourselves understanding. We find ourselves seeing it for what it is and saying, this is where I was hurt last time. This is where I know that compassion, I know that I don't need to suffer anymore. Okay? We're learning the lesson from it. And what happens from that, and this is from thousands of anecdotal stories. That means it's not proven, it's not something that's a formula. But when we start to live in that emotional wisdom, in that neutral compassion, in that higher frequency versus the negative frequency, those experiences that used to hurt us, they don't show up anymore. I have people who say, everybody around me is toxic. Everybody, and they say this with real, can't stand it. Everybody is making me suffer. But when they start to work and take responsibility for their own feelings versus blaming it on the toxic people around them, they get to this point where they say, everybody around me is so beautiful and loving. Toxic people, they are not around anymore. And the truth is, it's not that they change the people around them, is that they are not attracting those kinds of people anymore. Because again, like their electromagnetic frequency has changed. The frequency is only resonant with the people that resonate with that. So we identify the pattern that's linked to the emotion. We understand the pattern, which in this case is just the opposite side of the emotion, and that has been done for us. Carolyn Mine has written this book for us. We don't have to think about it. And we learn the lesson by discovering the way out of the situation. And the way out is the affirmation, the intention, the reprogrammings of our beliefs. And then we clear it and reprogram it by changing the DNA, which is literally putting it on an alarm point with our essential oils. And we release the pattern from the memory held in the limbic system, and that is just the breathing. Okay? So ultimately, this is a breathing meditation exercise that is going to move us from a negative emotion to a positive emotion. So sometimes it's actually a positive emotion and the other emotion seems negative and we are confused. But literally, it's always about moving from the shadow to the gift. So think of it as from lower frequency to higher frequency, and drop all our labels around negative and positive. So when we talk about 5 common emotions, we can start there. So some people say, I don't know what emotion I'm feeling, I just don't feel good. Well, some people are very clear. I feel hurt. So they're going to look in the book, right? But some people don't know. So I say, okay, start with these 5 really common emotions. These 5 emotions are grief, worry, fear of the unknown, loneliness, and anger. And let me just walk you through really quickly how I would use this book. And you notice that I tab the pages so it's easy to find. So I'm going to work on, let's see, do you all have any preference? I'm just going to give you a choice of any of these 5 emotions. Okay, let's see. Some of you talked about, fear. All right, fear of the unknown is Sacred Mountain on the pineal point. How do I know that? Because I go to where all the emotions are. I go to that tab and it's in alphabetical order. And in this case, it's under U because it's unknown and fear of the unknown. Okay, so I go past all of that and I come into unknown. Okay, and you have the emotion, unknown, fear of the unknown. You have the other side, and that's knowingness. So you go from fear to knowingness. And the way out is the affirmation I was talking about, and it says, listen to your heart. So you see how, as I write here, listen to your heart, right? And the oil is Sacred Mountain, and the point is the pineal. Now, how do I know what the pineal point is? Well, it says the chart here is B, E, B, F, or H. So again, I have a tab for charts. I go to charts, I look at B, and the pineal point is right. Wait a minute, hold on. I'm looking for it. Okay, right in the back here, right there. So it's called also the occipital protuberance. So right in the back of our head, there is like one point where it kind of comes out a little bit. So I would take Sacred Mountain, which is not here. So we can really just pretend right now. We would take the oil, we would put it on our palm, and we would circle it around 3 times clockwise. We would breathe it, and then we would put it on our crown of our head, back of our head, and then we put it on our emotional points and the back of our neck. And then we would put it on the point, the alarm point. So in this case, it's back here, the pineal. And then we would breathe it in. So this is a breathing, inhalation, exhalation, meditative exercise. We breathe in, and there are 3 breaths for each section. So the first 3 breaths, we're going to feel fear of the unknown. We breathe it in, we allow it to come up in our body, we notice where it is in our body, allow it to be there. No stories, no attachments. As we exhale, we just let it go. So we're not attaching to anything. And then we inhale again, calling it up again, feeling it, and then we let it go. One last time, inhale, feel it, where it is in our body, just notice, and then we let it go, right? We are calling out fear of the unknown. And then we move into knowingness. So as we breathe and we call in knowingness, we are going to find in our memory bank what it feels like to be in complete knowingness. So at least some point in our life, we may have felt that, and we call that up, and we feel that in our body. If for some reason there is an emotion that we have absolutely no experience with, we can just pretend. It's like, okay, in my dream, I have true knowingness. What does that feel like? Wow, that feels powerful. That feels like, oh, I'm like sitting up straight, and all of a sudden my chest is puffed, and oh yes, that's knowingness, like standing in that. Okay, so the second 3 breaths, we're really going to feel that positive emotion, and just notice again where it is. You exhale it out, you let that go too. You're not attaching either to the negative or the positive. And then the last 3 breaths, we are still feeling, right, the knowingness, and then we say the statement, listen to your heart. So, and you can play with this. You can say, oh, I want to say listen to my heart. So listen to my heart. You can say listen to your heart like you're talking to yourself. And you say that for 3 breaths. Again, every time you exhale, you let it go. And as you inhale, you again feel the knowingness and you say the statement. Now, we also connect the statements. So ultimately, we say, listen to your heart so you can move from fear of the unknown into knowingness. Okay, so in this case, there may be a certain event, there may be a certain past event, but we're just talking to that belief inside us that staying in this place of fear of the unknown is sort of stopping us from moving forward. We're not really wanting to relive that event. We're not always going back to that story. We're just staying with the emotions and the feelings. Okay, because you can understand the slippery slope of always going back to the event that hurt us, the event that made us fearful of the unknown, and it relives it, and it actually goes deeper into our belief system. So we don't want to like take 2 steps forward and 1 steps back all the time. Yeah. Of course, it's fine if that memory comes up, but really stay with your body, and that's what this exercise is. Okay, so we go into much more in depth about this whole modality in this Emotional Wisdom with Essential Oils Coach training course, and this is a 12-week course